Hello, Matt here from RetroOnly.com. Today we'll be talking about how many different Atari consoles there are. Before we get to that, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Do you happen to own an Atari console and maybe you wondered how many were made before the one that you own? Or maybe you're just looking to buy an old Atari console and want to know the differences between them and how many there actually were. No matter which of these questions you have, in this video we'll try to answer them all. So how many Atari consoles are there? Including the Atari Pong console, there were 10 original gaming consoles that were made by Atari. These 10 consoles do not include any of the flashback consoles that they're currently making more of regularly. It just counts the original Atari consoles. If you're trying to decide which one you want to buy, or which one is the best console, you'll definitely want to keep watching this video to learn a little more about each different Atari console. But first, let's look at the brief history of the Atari. The first Atari console was introduced in 1972, and it is an excellent working video game console. By using one of the original Ataris, you can easily play some of your favorite games from years gone by. After the first device was manufactured, Atari began introducing more advanced features on all of their future consoles. Atari Pong. Pong is where the Atari consoles all began, and it was first introduced in 1972. Atari is included in the top popular gaming consoles that were ever made in the world. Atari has introduced many sequels to the Pong console since, which helped them have great sales, especially around the Christmas season. The one huge downside to the Pong console was that it just played one single game on it, Pong. One other important feature was that Pong was easily remade from many other consoles and mobile platforms since then, so the game is still highly regarded and known pretty well. The next console that Atari made was the Atari Video Computer System. The Atari Video Computer System is also more commonly known as the Atari 2600, and this is the console that many people think of when they think of Atari. Their hardware is on the basis of a microprocessor, while the games are stored in the ROM of the cartridge. With the availability of these cartridge games, you can easily play whatever game you want on this classic console. The Atari 2600 is what all of the Ataris since have been compared to, and even what Atari makes all of their classic consoles look like. Parts of Atari 2600. The Atari 2600 VCS consists of the following parts: 2 joystick controllers, 2 connected pairs of controllers, cartridge games, and of course the famous Pac-Man that can be played on it. This model of Atari was very popular among the public, and approximately 30 million units were sold in that time. Atari 5200. After the success of the Atari 2600, the brand introduced the Atari 5200. The processor was considerably faster than the previous console, while some new and advanced features were added that were not the best on the 2600. Although the Atari did have some backlash due to the content of their games, the 5200 was still a strong gaming console all across the world. The Atari 5200 also had enough space for a game library. This is just one reason why many people loved the Atari and thought they had great potential compared to their competitors. The Atari 5200 also had a few different controllers that performed a variety of functions and gave the users multiple buttons like pause, start, and reset. The Atari 5200 also had a feature of killing Intellivision. Because Intellivision consistently gloated about its 16-position controller versus the Atari's 8-position controller. And this caused Atari to release an entire 360-degree speed responsive joystick. Even though this was extremely creative for its time, it did have a few imperfections. The first one was that it did not self-focus when it was being used. The second was that the joystick was pretty touchy, which made it harder to use for many people. The Atari 5200 did not have any issues with the quality of the consoles, and has never really had an issue with them crashing either. The Atari 5200 was introduced in 1982, and there were over 1 million units of it sold. This console was loved by many people, even amongst the changing demographics of gaming and consoles, but didn't even come close to being as popular as the 2600. The Atari 800. The Atari 800 was introduced in 1979. The housing block for the 800 was the first ever housing to be made up of aluminum. The 800 also had features of custom coprocessor chips. The function of these chips was to create the graphics and sound for the 800. This is an excellent platform and source of attraction for the game lovers of that time. This user-friendly console had two main features. The cartridge. The cartridge is so you can easily plug it in and use it or remove it whenever you want. Plus, it was pretty sturdy. It also featured sprite and collision detection, which is why it's the first choice for playing games for many people who want an old Atari. The RAM chip. The RAM in the 800 was a maximum of 48 kilobytes, while the CPU was 1.8 megahertz. It also had 4 interlaid expansion slots and 2 cartridge slots. The Atari 800 actually consists of 6 different slots, 2 cartridge slots, and 4 slots for the controllers. The other features of the Atari 800 console include printer support, real joystick support, supporting of sound by using UNIX, controlling of the sound system with UNIX, 8 disk drive, and direct loading of files like Atari Basic and Atari Executable. So we can certainly say that the Atari 800 is an excellent game machine, and in the duration of their major production, approximately 2 million units of the Atari 800 were sold. Atari 400. Like the Atari 800, the Atari 400 is also an 8-bit home computer system. The price for the 400 was a bit lower than the Atari 800. The 800 sold for $1,000, while the 400 sold for $550. The 400 systems were heavier than the Atari 800, and they had excellent graphical representations and excellent sound quality for the time. The parts of the Atari 400 included 16 kilobytes of RAM, 1 cartridge post, and a user-friendly keyboard. The cartridge included BASIC and other Atari programming languages. The circuit under the metal shield was used to limit the amount of radio waves allowed outside the console. The Atari 400 had an external floppy drive and castle recorder, which were used for playing the games. In the duration between 1979 to 1992, it impressively sold over 4 million units. The Atari 7800 Pro System. This Pro System was introduced in 1984 and was made with advanced technology compared to its predecessors. The features of the 7800 included a digital joystick with 2 buttons, arcade type of gaming quality, and high-end graphics. You could play almost every type of game imaginable by connecting the 7800 with your personal computer. And some of the most popular games of the time, like Racetrack, were played on the Atari 7800. The net RAM was 4 kilobytes, while the ROM was 48 kilobytes. The Atari 7800 Pro System was the best video game console for every game lover. The Atari 7800 Pro System sold just over 1.1 million consoles when it was released. Again, a far cry from the number of 2600 consoles that were sold. The Atari 65XE and 130X. The 65XE and 130X are similar to the Atari 400 and 800, by all of them being a part of the 8-bit family. The 65XE Atari has 64 kilobytes of ROM, while the 130XE Atari has 128 kilobytes of ROM. The Atari Lynx. This system, produced by Atari, is an 8-bit handheld game system that was specifically designed to compete with the Game Boy and Game Gear systems of the time. The Lynx was decently popular among people because of their unique graphics and designs. According to Atari, approximately 500,000 units of the Atari Lynx were sold in the United States alone, but it was far from being as popular as Nintendo's Game Boy. Atari Jaguar. The Jaguar is a more advanced video game console that featured a 64-bit system, and it supports a large number of games that include Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Predators, and other popular games of the time. Conclusion. No matter what Atari you find that you like, you'll be able to spend hours upon hours playing the games and probably loving every minute of it. There are still many people all around the world that still own their original Ataris and enjoy playing on them every single day. This has been Matt from RetroOnly.com. Please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel.